I'll show quickly how I make waterproof boxes. Waterproof boxes used to be very common 15-20 years ago when waterproofing techniques were less mature. We had to rely more on servos. But now with the waterproofing techniques used and the higher use of circuit boards and speed controls, waterproof boxes are much less common. I use them because I made kind of like a standard control box, which has gun boards, switches for if you have a brushed pump in the receiver, and I have a standard set of connections. These boxes can fit in any one of 5 capital ships that all have the same common interface, so I can very quickly switch between one capital ship and the other one. And then I also waterproof all of the electronics inside the box as well. So it's a double layer of protection, and knock on wood, I've had no failures over 4 years and many battles, many sinks. So I need to make a new one because I need more servo leads coming out of it because of the system I have on Charnhorse. That's why I need to make a new one. I could abandon them and then just go with kind of the current common structure without a waterproof box, but I like the gun boards, so I decided to make another box. What I use is it's like a 4-inch square electrical junction box with no holes in it. I'll sort of lap off these guys here. I like it because the lid has a nice gasket material, and you can, here's a completed one, you can just screw it in, and you don't need to use silicone or anything. So a lot of legacy waterproof boxes would be like plywood and use a plexiglass cover, but you'd have to silicone it, so if you had to break into it during an event, you're kind of in a bad situation because the silicone wouldn't dry in time. Where this, I can, if I need to open it up for any reason, I can just unscrew it, do whatever I need to do, and then screw it back in, and then be ready for the next battle. At most, if my boat sinks in deep water for a long amount of time, it might have a couple drops inside. But this gasket seal works really well. So what I do, you can kind of see, this is a finished box, this is the box in progress. So this is a technique I copied from someone else to get the wire, a good seal in the wires, because that's really, the only penetrations in the box are the lid and where the wires come out. So if you have the wires coming straight out, it's really hard to get a good seal on those. So what you do is run them along the side of the box where you can get much better coverage of sealant on the wires and between the box. What I use for sealant is what is used on real boats for sealant, so 3M 5200. This stuff is permanent, but it kind of works in this case because I don't really plan on removing any of the leads. The downside would be if you shorted one of these wires somehow, it would, if you short a wire, the insulation will burn off, which would kind of ruin that wire. But I found that if you're careful with your electronics, shorting doesn't happen that often, so it's a risk I'm willing to live with. So what I did here is I cut a hole, just kind of that small slit there. I printed up a little U shape just because it was easier than trying to cut pieces of plexiglass or something of the right size. I E6000 that on there, so that's pretty solid. And then I got all my leads prepped and my wiring prepped with the standard connections, so this box will be semi-interchangeable with the other box. I hooked up a receiver just for wire length on the servo leads to kind of make sure that the leads are, there isn't a ton of excess wire on one lead versus the other lead. And then these other connections with the red But those red connectors are for gun boards, and if I wanted to use a light switch or a brushed pump motor switch. So what I'll do is I kind of, at least I had them kind of in order a little bit, but I'll kind of like hold all of these back, and then I'll lay down a thick layer of sealant on the box, and then I'll kind of sequentially put the wires down one at a time, and then I'll make sure that I have 100% coverage around the circumference of the wire of each one. Things like this twisted lead, I'll probably untwist to make sure I get each of the 3 wires. These kind of ones with the wires stuck together, I don't think I need to worry about that. So sequentially lay them all down, cover them, and then I have a little, just cut out a piece of fiberglass. This will be the kind of cover to go over. So I'll probably coat this whole thing too, and then I'll clamp it down and let it dry for probably at least 24 hours. But if I do it right, it'll pay off, and I'll have another completely waterproof box. Start with just doing the kind of like mow the lawn pattern. So I'll sequentially lay the wires down. Use some tape to hold them in place. With this one, I'll sort of untwist it a little bit so I can kind of jam some in there. Probably overkill, but better be safe than have wet electronics. It's definitely stuff you want to wear gloves for. The whole permanent thing. Okay, so now I'll just kind of make sure I get the full contact surface on the where the plate goes. Try to fill in the gap on the back side here. Okay, now I'm gonna put some on the plate. This is really just to make sure the plate is has like a full wetted surface. I think there's going to be a fair amount of excess here when we squeeze it together. Squeeze it down there. Okay, it's pretty much lined up. Some wax paper over it. Just clamp it down there. Okay, my radio box is all dry. So I actually did 2 layers, so once the first one was done, the next day I put another layer that kind of covered all these edges. And then you can see I put the receiver in, and then I added the two gun boards and a extra pump board, even though you can see with that it isn't hooked up. So now what I'll do would be to hook it up to the wiring harness inside the boat and then plug everything in and test it out.